On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
The studio audience was still laughing as Stephen Colbert made his way to the desk, but that energy didn't hold. Something in his expression had shifted. The familiar warmth faded within seconds, replaced by something sharper and far more personal. This wasn't another rehearsed dig at Donald Trump. This was about Colbert's own network, his parent company, and a $16 million settlement that had become impossible to sidestep. Paramount had quietly resolved Trump's lawsuit over a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, and Colbert...
My mustache comes to you with a heavy heart because while I was on vacation, my parent corporation, Paramount, paid Donald Trump a $16 million settlement over his 60 Minutes lawsuit. As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, I am offended, and I don't know if anything will ever repair my trust in this company. But just taking a stab at it, I'd say $16 million would help.
Wasted no time calling the payment exactly what he believed it was, a bribe, plain and simple. He held the camera's gaze like a man who fully understood what it cost to say that word out loud. He told his audience he wasn't just offended as a comedian, he was offended as someone who had spent years believing the CBS name still carried.
I believe this kind of complicated financial settlement with a sitting government official has a technical name in legal circles. It's big fat bribe. Because this all comes as Paramount's owners are trying to get the Trump administration to approve the sale of our network to a new owner, Skydance. Not the music I was expecting. Okay, that was me dancing.
Genuine weight. My mustache comes to you with a heavy heart, Bien, because while he was away on vacation, his parent corporation, Paramount, had handed Donald Trump a $16 million settlement tied to his 60 Minutes lawsuit. As a longtime employee who had worn that network's name with pride, Colbert admitted he felt betrayed. He wasn't sure anything could fully restore his faith in the company, though he dryly suggested $16 million routed in his direction might be a reasonable starting point. For longtime viewers, that moment landed with real gravity. They remember when network news meant something, when reporters challenged authority rather than quietly negotiating around it. Colbert then walked the audience through the details. Trump had
Last week, Bondi dropped a bombdi, releasing a memo saying that there is no incriminating client list of Epstein and no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. You can't take this away from your base. That is MAGA's favorite conspiracy. What are we going to find out next? That immigrants aren't eating cats?
Sued CBS over how a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris was edited. Legal analysts had questioned whether the lawsuit even had solid footing, but none of that was the most troubling part. What made the settlement impossible to dismiss was its timing. Paramount was simultaneously pursuing regulatory approval for its massive Skydance merger while writing that check to a sitting president. The timing didn't just raise eyebrows, the timing became the entire story. Colbert never pointed a direct finger at any executive. He didn't have to. He simply arranged the facts in sequence and trusted the audience to feel the weight of the pattern. A lawsuit, a settlement, a pending merger, mounting political pressure, and then almost immediately, the announcement that The Late Show was being canceled. CBS framed the decision as purely financial, but Colbert's argument was never that a corporate statement had the power to erase public doubt. His argument was simpler and more durable. People had every right to ask questions. When a network pays a sitting president millions of dollars and then pulls the plug on one of his most consistent critics within the same news cycle, audiences don't need a conspiracy theory to feel something is off. They only need a calendar. They only need a functioning memory. Journalism exists to make the powerful uncomfortable, not to leave executives sweating over regulatory approvals. Then, Trump responded. Rather than addressing any concerns about press independence, he celebrated openly. He took swipes at Colbert's talent, mocked his ratings, and treated the unraveling of a major late-night institution like a personal conquest. That response shifted the atmosphere entirely. Colbert had raised the alarm about institutional pressure, and Trump's public gloating made that pressure suddenly, undeniably visible. A president with clean hands could have remained silent. A leader who genuinely respected free expression could have simply acknowledged that comedians have always had the right to criticize those in power. Instead, what the public witnessed was a recognizable playbook: discredit the critic, celebrate the wreckage, and convert yet another American institution into a personal trophy. Colbert presented Trump's reaction almost as Exhibit A, not with outrage or theatrics, but with quiet deliberateness. He let viewers absorb the contrast themselves. One side called it a business decision, the other side cheered it like a sentencing. And standing between both was a comedian behind a microphone, calmly asking whether the country was still at ease with that reality. For older Americans in particular, the moment carried a heavier warning. They remember presidents who resented the press but still acknowledged its necessary role in a functioning democracy. They remember when a comedian roasting the White House was considered a healthy sign of free society, not cause for celebrating a ruined career. So when Trump boasted about Colbert's downfall, it didn't read as strength, it read as smallness. And that became the most telling silence of all. Not the silence of a canceled program or a carefully worded corporate statement, but the silence that fell when audiences began to realize just how quickly institutions buckle when money, federal regulators, corporate anxiety, and presidential hostility all crash against the same newsroom. American media can preserve its independence when billion-dollar mergers, federal regulators, corporate anxiety, and presidential hostility all crash against the same newsroom at once. Trump may have gloated, executives may have issued their polished statements, but the image that endured was Colbert, steady behind that desk, calling the settlement out in plain and unsparing language. Because corruption doesn't always arrive through back-channel deals or unmarked envelopes. Sometimes it walks in through a press release, a merger deadline, a quietly canceled show, and a powerful man already celebrating before the public has even had a chance to ask why.